It's me. Thank you guys. I'm gonna just preface this with, I did not plan to stream at all. I planned to watch a DVD on how to like scream and vocal exercises, and then the internet came back and I was like, fuck it, we'll do it live. So I was indulging in a little cannabis, and it's legal in my state, and I'm going to teach you guys about feedback. This was something I planned to do completely sober, but we're just gonna see what happens, because nothing bad can happen. All right, I'm experienced. One more time. Experienced. I'm experienced, and I'm gonna teach you guys about feedback and why it's important. The reason why I wanted to talk about this, I feel like I learned about feedback and like the ingredients of feedback pretty late in life, and if somebody had taught me these fucking skills when I was younger, it would have helped with a lot of conversations that otherwise would have just been super weird or awkward. So that's what this is. Transition. Wah. Feedback. Leaving an impact and growing together. Why am I not here? Because I'm here now. Feedback. All right. Yes. So first slide. Why do you need this? Feedback is something that a lot of us have experienced in the past, and oftentimes it was not received or delivered as well as we should have liked. And a lot of people don't know what feedback is, really. You think it's like a conversation that would happen in a professional setting, but feedback could be anything. And understanding like just the bare bones of how this stuff works, the ingredients, it'll help you understand the expectations for conversation. Oh yeah, this is just the keynote default template. Yeah, and we need feedback to grow in the workplace and as people. All right? So there you go. It could be ambiguous and vague for people, depending on like your past work history, your life. So I'm going to break it down for you guys so you understand, as simple as possible, how to interpret this information and how you can act upon it, I guess. So there are varieties of feedback. General feedback. Will this actually play? It does. No, go back. There's general feedback. So this is not specific. This is feedback most people have experienced in their lives, whether it was like a shitty job, even a good job. Life. You've heard this throughout your entire life. It's not super impactful. You're unable to take any steps to improve or remedy behaviors or actions. It's more profound when negative. So like if I say you fucking suck, you feel extra bad about that. Like if I said you did a good job, you're like, yeah. Yeah. And then it's gone after a little bit. You know, like it's not anything negative is always weighed more heavily. All right. I just did a Squidward smells good, because that's general positive feedback. That's what that is. So you may have heard, that was a bad job. You could have done better. You did a great job. I'm very impressed. Great work. While they're nice little high fives, they don't really have the impact or show the appreciation for, you know, how, I guess, the weight of what you're trying to convey. So what are we going to talk about? Constructive feedback. It's specific. It explains a behavior exhibited and the impact of that behavior. It's used in a positive or negative way, and it helps an individual take appropriate next steps, helping themselves and other teammates as a result. Now, this could be applied also on streaming. So whether you're working with people, and this helps in the professional setting, it helped me immensely in just regular relationships. It's important. Constructive feedback. So this is positive constructive feedback. An example: hey friend, I really appreciate you answering my questions so thoroughly. It made me feel like you really cared and I felt important. That's positive specific feedback. Okay, thank you for thinking of me in this tweet. It makes me feel good that you think of me on occasion. Like, these are, you're giving the reason why you appreciate it. It's not you did a good job. You understand? It's just a specific thing. You just literally break down the ingredients of the things that made you feel good or had a positive outcome. It's why when you guys call in and you share like a personal experience, I always thank you for sharing it. Because that whole phrase, you or me living a different life, that's where this really comes from. Like, everybody feels these things. Articulating them is something that is really difficult. And then this is an example of negative constructive feedback, which I've received. So, hey, Steve, when you cook food and leave your stuff in the sink, it gets in the way of me being able to prepare my own food. It makes me feel like you're not considerate of me. So this, even though when it says negative, a lot of people think it's really, really bad. Like in a bad way, like this is bad, but what you're explaining is why the negative outcome, what the negative outcomes are from the behavior. You know what I mean? If I said, get your fucking dishes out of the sink, like stop leaving your dishes in the sink, that doesn't give any direction. Yeah, agreed, Edward. The hardest thing in life is articulating your feelings. So a lot of this stuff, like, I don't know, these were things that I understood the concepts of, but I never really had words to associate with them. So it always helped me to talk about this. If you guys have any examples of like positive specific feedback or negative specific feedback that you've received, you can share them too. I fully, am okay with that. If you're comfortable, of course. And then now, how and when should you give this feedback? You want to know? You want to know where the rabbit hole goes? When? Feedback is always best in the moment, but be cognizant of the emotional climate. What does that mean? Well, let's say you have a friend who is currently going through like a breakup, right? And you hear them fighting or upset on the phone, and you decide that you are going to now ask this person to clean up their shit and be specific about your feedback. Probably not the best time. Like kind of read the room. That's really what it is. So you can give negative constructive feedback without being rude or mean. Yes, Bane. Yes. I'll tell you about the extra steps after this, because once you get everything, like, again, I'm explaining the individual elements, the ingredients, but together they make this amazing thing. So, yeah, cognizant of the emotional climate, follow up with individuals you've given feedback to and you've seen a corrected behavior. So, like, if I gave constructive feedback to somebody and they didn't improve, or like they didn't improve on communication or whatever it was, the next step is like, okay, well, is this somebody I work with? Like, what's the deal here? You got to figure that out. It requires more conversation and rapport. If you can't handle that, then that's not like your fucking pay grade. You just got to work with that sort of situation and provide feedback when you can. As a work colleague, you don't speak on like a friend thing for work sometimes. You have to just literally tell people what it is. So if you see something corrected, like this happens all the time, you'll give specific advice to somebody. So for example, like me not taking my dishes out of the sink. If somebody gave me that feedback, aka James gave me that feedback, and it was very valuable to me, because feedback is a gift. It's something that like one of my old managers used to say all the time, and it was so fucking funny. Johnny, wonderful dude. Anyway. Yeah, so following up with those people after you've seen a change, like, I don't know, it's like giving feedback on I'm not going to be specific with this, but it's like giving feedback on a tweet that you felt was in poor taste and you reached out to like be proactive about, you know, I know what you're trying to do, but this isn't achieving the goal that you're like looking for. And it makes me feel this way, you know, and starting a dialogue that way through DMs and not in public or whatever, I think can yield a lot of like good results. Like it's just a matter of communicating that stuff, communicating directly with the people that you have an issue with. If they're friends, of course, there's always going to be, when you post something like that online, there's an expectation that you'll see every person with a different, you know, profile picture in there. But that tends to be general negative feedback, and you're not going to like listen to that. There's nothing good that comes out of that, you know? Follow up with individuals you've given feedback to and see corrected behavior. But yeah, when you see the corrected behavior, you fucking thank them. You reinforce it with like, thank you for listening to me and thank you for being empathetic to my situation. You know, thank you for taking the time to talk with me about it. I have a personal example of this. In video calls with someone, they were always multitasking while we spoke. I told them that I prefer a 30-minute dedicated convo over a multi-hour multitasking call because it felt like I never had their attention, which resulted in me feeling ignored and unimportant. They listened and modified immediately, and I've thanked them repeatedly for that. That is fucking great. See, that's good shit. That's really good. See, that's negative specific feedback. Because you're like, wow, I didn't really understand how this behavior could like negatively impact my relationship with people at work or how I'm perceived. You know? Because that's a really big thing. Because it's all with good intention. It's not even like a control thing. You mentioned about personal relationships. I've had to really learn how to express things with my GF, whose words of affirmation love language. Oh yeah, we talked about this when we were playing Skate. I never really had to put words to my feelings on my regular basis. For her, just saying I love you isn't really enough because she just asked herself why, and not in self-deprecating way. It's like saying good job. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, see, Steph, that's wonderful. Yeah, so that leads us to our third example. You approach people with something prepared, and this will help ensure you keep your feedback constructive. If you just dive into this like with no preparation as to what you want to talk about and the like solid watered down things, you eventually cause probably distrust, or that person could be inclined to be like, you know, you know what you were talking about, because it's so off the cuff. I don't know anybody that can do feedback like in the moment like that without some form of preparation, you know? And that's okay to do too. Like, hey, can we talk later? Like, that's usually like, you know, but there's good connotations with that. I never understood that. Like, can we talk later or whatever? Like, hey, we need to talk. Like that negative connotation to it. That honestly, I don't, that to me was like, okay, we need to figure something out, you know? And how did we get to this point? It's interesting. So that's when, now, all the time. How? This is a really big part. This ingredient is, I think, the biggest part after knowing all the other shit. Because I feel like all the things we talked about, you pretty much know. The how, rarely flushed out from what I understand. So you always assume positive intent unless it's blatant disregard. And when we say blatant disregard, I feel like most of us know what that threshold is. Most of us know. It's like you crossed a fucking line and you looked at my face when you did that shit. You know what I mean? Without any evidence or whatever, like you always have to assume positive intent. So now nobody does anything on purpose. And if that's the case, it may not be your job to give the feedback to the individual. Walk away. Do you know this person? Can you speak to their personality? Do you know them as people? Then you probably should fucking walk away. There's literally no reason for you to involve yourself in the conversation unless your agenda is to, like, I don't know, use them in some way to show how cool you are or something like that. I think that's a really weird line to be in. Yeah. Interesting. I feel like I see a lot of this just on Twitter. That's what I think of immediately. Like social media is just like, bam, assuming negative intent. And then the second piece, super important. Maybe you don't have rapport with this person, but you know them or you're an acquaintance. You have to ask permission before giving any feedback. Can I give you some feedback? Is like the most basic version of that, and really like level 1 if you really want to be specific about it. I think that gives you, you know, a pretty straightforward request for anybody who's trying to like figure out their own way to say it. Can I give you some feedback? Straight up is like, yeah, you can, or no, you cannot. Okay, then that's it. Just respect it. So permission is one of the key elements to making sure that your constructive, positive, negative feedback is heard and internalized. Without permission, and a lot of this stuff, like you can kind of get past being in intimate relationships with people or like knowing people for a while. But permission is absolutely like a huge factor in this. When you ask permission, it frames it more positively. Yeah, hey, can I give you some feedback? Like how can somebody say that aggressively? And if they do, that's a really weird aggressive phrase. You know what I mean? It requires too many words to be angry. Exactly. Because ultimately it is up to the only way this shit works is when you're both participating in the dialogue. And oftentimes that's not the case. It is people shouting at an individual. You know what I mean? Like, are you gonna fucking listen to a bunch of people that are just like, fuck you, and like being generally negative towards you? No. Why would you listen to them? Why would you listen to them? There's nothing specific being brought up, you know, given to you with your permission. Can I give you some feedback? Yes. And I welcome you. If you guys have any feedback for me, like negative, positive, whatever, as long as it's specific, I will always look at it. And I fucking appreciate it too. It means you took the time to really think about it. And then the last thing, thank them for listening and remind them of the resources they can use to improve the situation as it pertains to the context of the feedback. Okay? So if you felt like you needed to give something like a piece of information, article, a past conversation, anything like that, as long as you can provide some sort of like extra substance, I feel like this mostly works for the like work environment, but it can also work outside of it depending on who you're talking to. Konky Dank, yeah. Konky Donk, Dinky Donk. I'm toasted. But we did it. How? I love this cat, by the way. Anybody got any questions? Huh? Fantastic. That was my presentation on feedback. Like and fucking subscribe. God damn.